Hello, welcome everyone, wherever you're joining us for today's webinar. My name's Alexander Love, and I'm a senior editor for Global Data. We're very pleased to have you attend this event to discuss the topic Canada Rising, the next frontier in clinical trials. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar platform. This webinar is browser-based, so if you disconnect at any point, please click the link you received via email to rejoin the session. If you'd like to ask any questions, you can do so using the Q&A widget. And we'll try and get through as many of your questions as we can once the discussion has ended. And please use the help widget if you experience any technical difficulties or require any further assistance. You can also use the related content box to access any additional resources. Today's webinar is brought to you by Oximio, and I'm just going to give you an introduction to your speakers. So firstly, we have Caitlin Gurashi, and Caitlin has been with Oximio Bâle Canada for more than a decade. As Managing Director, Caitlin oversees the planning, direction, and management of operations, while also guiding the organization's strategic vision and future growth. Your second speaker today is Dr. Zaida Khan, who has more than 20 years of experience in a variety of roles in the clinical trial sector. And you can see there, just on the slide, just the diversity of Zaida's experience from preclinical to procurement and program management. And this is the overview of today's webinar. So we're going to start off by some slides from Global Data's Intelligence Center and how Canada's position is in the global clinical trial landscape. We'll look at the top sponsors, the top therapy areas, and trial phase. Next up, we'll be looking at Canada as a growing hub for clinical trials and the key advantages, before talking about the challenges. And you can see there the challenges we'll be covering: crossing borders, complexity of trials, logistics, and budget control. And then lastly, we'll be looking at supporting clinical trials with Oximio Bâle Canada in North America and globally. So we're going to start things off just by giving you an overview of some clinical trial data from Global Data. And the global clinical trials market is projected to reach a value of $101.5 billion by 2030. And the growing clinical trials market is, the growth is rapid, but it's facing increasing complexity, rising trial volumes of trial data, and difficulty recruiting and retaining patients. And the trend towards more targeted trial designs are driving up costs and operational challenges. Adaptive trial models introduced during the pandemic, while flexible, add further complexity. Regulatory shifts, such as the US Inflation Reduction Act, create uncertainty around pharma revenues and R&D investment. And geopolitical instability, including supply chain disruptions and tensions with China, add further risk to trial planning and execution. Amid these challenges, Canada is emerging as a more attractive and stable environment for running clinical trials. The country's regulatory stability, infrastructure, and relative insulation from global tensions position Canada as a preferred alternative for sponsors seeking reliability and efficiency in clinical development. Next up, we will have a look at Canada's position in the clinical trial landscape. So you can see here, this is an overview of the number of trials running per country between October 2020 and I believe it was October 2025. So you can see Canada is in 5th place globally, and Canada offers both stability and predictability. The country's GDP growth was forecast at 1.4% in 2025, and Canada also boasts a higher working age employment rate of 74.7% than the US, which is at 71.9%. Within the Americas, Canada is ranked lowest for legal risk and second lowest for political risk. This combination of economic resilience, political security, and reliable institutions all make Canada an increasingly attractive option for investors seeking long-term returns on clinical trial activity. And the final slide I'm going to show you before I hand you over to your expert speakers is all looking at the top sponsors within the country. Here we go. So in this slide, we can see the top 10 sponsors of completed and ongoing clinical trials in Canada since October 2020. Top of the field is AstraZeneca, which in January 2025 announced a $570 million investment in Canada to support a move to a larger facility within the Greater Ontario area, strengthening the company's R&D capability. The move, which will lead to the creation of an estimated 700 jobs across the business. And moving on, we'll take a look at the top therapy areas and clinical trial phases. So I have one more slide for you here. Now, let's have a look at the type of research being undertaken. In the image on the left, you can see the top 10 therapy areas of ongoing and completed trials in Canada since October 2020. As of September 2025, Global Data recorded Canada as having approximately 2,865 active or ongoing trials over phases 1 to 4. By phase, so there were 296 recorded in phase 1. In phase 2, there were 1,028. In phase 3, there were 1,165, and in phase 4, there were 376. These figures tell us the scale and breadth of Canada's role in global clinical research. Now, I'm going to hand you over to Caitlin, who is going to take us through Canada's competitive advantage on the world stage and explain why the country is rapidly rising as a reliable hub for clinical trials. Over to you, Caitlin.
Thank you, Alex, for the fantastic overview of the market. At a glance, we can see an overview of the key areas which is benefiting sponsors and CROs who choose to run their clinical trials in Canada. As Alex mentioned, we will take a deeper dive on these various items. Canada's close proximity to the US and large, diverse population makes it ideal for multi-site trials and varied participant recruitment. The majority of its population is bordered along the US, which is, of course, the world's leader in clinical research. This allows for concentrated recruitment of participants in accessible areas and can simplify logistics for sponsors. With major clinical trial hub centers around Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, sponsors have access to world-class airports, seaports, and road networks with further investment for continuous improvement. The government has the Transportation 2030 strategic plan currently in place for a national transportation system that will support economic growth. One of the themes of this federal plan is the trade corridors to global markets. This will optimize the flow of goods across the country. There's also the National Trade Corridors Fund, which will be funding projects until 2028 to improve the fluidity of Canada's supply chains. As supply chains face increasing strain from geopolitical disruption, Canada's reputation for regulatory compliance and logistical reliability positions the country as a standout choice. Canada's publicly funded healthcare system provides free, high-quality care, enabling broad patient participation in clinical trials, while also removing the financial barriers which can often skew representation in countries with private healthcare models. A population of 40 million people across diverse ethnic groups and cultural origins ensures clinical trial data captured across a wide variety of backgrounds, which will help improve the ability to generalize these trial findings. A highly educated workforce adds to this strength with a receptive patient population willing to participate in clinical trials, more so than those in the US. This was highlighted during COVID with a higher Canadian acceptance rate of 87% compared to 80% in the US. This slide here shows the top 15 associated institutions of clinical trials in phase 1 to 4 in Canada. The country boasts a deep talent pool of experienced researchers, clinicians, and support staff trained in global clinical trial standards. It boasts 17 medical schools, 40 groupings of academic healthcare organizations and over 15,000 researchers. Top ranking institutions include institutions such as the University of Toronto, ranked 21st globally, the University of British Columbia at 41st, and McGill University at 45th, providing world-class research and talent pipelines. In addition, universities are the top 3 associated organizations for investigators of clinical trials as well. Canada also has highly respected research institutions such as the University Health Network in Toronto, which is consistently ranked as one of Canada's top research hospitals, noted for cutting-edge work in oncology, transplantation, neurosciences, infectious diseases, and other areas of medicine. In addition, Canada also boasts a formidable list of top research hospitals featuring institutions such as the Hamilton Health Sciences, Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto, and the Ottawa Hospital Research Institute, just to name a few. Of the 2024 top 40 hospital lists, with 2025 not yet available, Oximio Barrel Canada is really proud to be working with 70% of these institutions on the list. This academic strength provides a robust infrastructure for both conducting and coordinating studies while following a framework driving good clinical practices designed to strengthen the protections for patients and increase R&D investment in clinical trials within Canada. The government actively invests in the research infrastructure with incentives and funding for clinical research to attract sponsors. The Canadian Institutes of Health Research allocates more than $1 billion annually to health research, while the federal and provincial governments invest up to $3.2 billion in life sciences R&D. This is enhanced, as we've seen in Alex's earlier slides, by major pharmaceutical investment from global healthcare companies, underlining their confidence within the Canadian life science sector. Health Canada offers a clear, efficient regulatory framework with fast review times and alignment with international guidelines. Regulatory changes that were put in place in 2001 helped streamline these processes, reducing phase 1 clinical trial review times from 60 days to actually just 7 days, while incorporating fundamental elements of good clinical practice. Combined with R&D tax incentives, such as the Scientific Research and Experimental Development Program, Canada has built a pro-innovation environment that supports trial sponsors from start to finish. The US and Canada actively collaborate on clinical trials. US-based sponsors frequently conduct trials in Canada, forming cross-border research partnerships. Institutions and pharmaceutical companies in both countries often work together, especially on large-scale, multi-center clinical trials. Shared regulatory frameworks like the ICH GCP compliance, having similar healthcare infrastructures, and English language alignment make this collaboration much easier. Joint academic and government initiatives include some like the NIH of the US and CIHR in Canada, having co-funded studies or collaborating on public health research in various therapeutic areas. Multinational consortia often include sites from both countries, particularly in oncology and rare disease research. Our role at Oximio is to support that innovation via our flawless logistics services. Stretching across the entire supply chain, supporting clinical trials, our experienced team can work with clients throughout the duration of their trial, from planning to the conclusion of your project. Let's have a look at some of the challenges which sponsors and CROs might face when running these clinical trials. This is a quick overview of the key challenges being faced. Things like crossing borders, trial complexity, logistics, and budget control are all areas that a sponsor needs to be aware of. Now let's take a deeper dive into each of these. A common misconception is that sponsors often assume that clinical supply processes will simply port over from one country to another, whether this is inbound to Canada or instances of Canadian distribution to the US. This can result in a cross-border failure. Canada is quite different to the US in this sense. It has its own documentation requirements, regulatory processes, bilingual labeling requirements for patient-facing materials, and customs procedures. If these aren't anticipated early, it can lead to costly delays or compliance risks. Some of the top failures we see are importer of record gaps with unclear roles, brokerage or classification inconsistencies, and incorrect documentation. It's essential to understand the various roles within a clinical trial and who is responsible for what. With that, I will now hand it over to Zaida, who is going to go into more details on the specific capabilities. Over to you.
Thank you, Caitlin, and thank you for that overview, both from yourself and Alex. It was really interesting to understand, why clinical trials in Canada are just so important. So the great advances we're seeing in medical research can also have a knock-on effect on the complexity of trial, because that also increases. Frequently, we see multi-country, multi-site trials, and this can be quite challenging, having to handle import-export requirements, as you've just indicated, customs clearance, IOR, translation, and all of these require local regulatory alignment across many regions. But also not to mention the subsequent form filling that goes with tailor-made documentation for each region. And this is where Oximio has the capabilities and the knowledge and the know-how to do this. There's also increasing scrutiny on data integrity, and digital systems often requiring integrated platforms, validated temperature monitoring tools, and of course, compliant documentation across all partners. So taking that into account, this is where clinical trial and clinical trial logistics needs to become more advanced. There's an increase in requirements for different temperature regimes to be managed in highly controlled environments, because the product, it can be moving from country to country. Each step in the process demands stringent regulatory compliance, real-time communication among stakeholders, and specialist knowledge in cold chain logistics and GMP standards. The final delivery to clinical sites often operates within a narrow time frame, making last mile logistics being a very critical element to the part of the delivery of IMPs. And of course, there needs to be contingency plans in place for dealing with any excursions, a plan A needing always a plan B. In the framework of new personalised, tailor-made clinical trials, there's also now a specialisation of different temperature regimes to manage. And these scenarios and these temperature regimes being ultra-low temperature and liquid nitrogen capabilities and temperature regimes actually make even the reasons for getting a real-time logistics provider in place and is able to coordinate all of those deliveries for last mile more important. When we talk about managing budgets in clinical trials, it really can be a moving target. It's not just about controlling costs, but also anticipating them. The key here is really to have realistic planning paired with ongoing monitoring and stakeholder transparency. One of the biggest challenges we face is forecasting costs not being done accurately enough. Planned budgets are obviously often underestimated, and actual logistics costs sometimes don't include emergency backups, sometimes relabeling, or additional storage that may be needed in terms of getting the product into the country. To stay on top of this, budget tracking has to be ongoing. It's not a one-time task, and you need to monitor your spend in real time and be ready to adjust accordingly and very quickly. That's why robust planning right from the get-go is essential. A strong budget should forecast both fixed and variable costs and include contingency buffers for the unpredictable events. Working with financially savvy logistics partners can help you uncover savings you might not otherwise notice and sometimes also miss. Whether it's better through better storage options or even better, more efficient customs handling, all of these elements can have better budget control. So across the globe, we all know that we have been hit with a lot of challenging elements when it comes to budgets. To one point to note is the US aid withdrawal, which was performed back in January, February of 2025, when the new US administration came into play. And the consequences of that and the US forthcoming withdrawal in 2026 will continue to have a knock-on effect. However, as we can see, circumstances can change rapidly. And therefore, again, like indicated, budgeting can be very difficult if you don't have the contingency in place and the right flexibility in the budgets that you might set from the get-go. Geopolitical change can also have an impact on budgets, as we've experienced with the US tariffs, where there is supply chain and logistics becomes critical, but working with experienced partners who really understand both the clinical and financial aspects can make a huge difference. Not only can you identify the cost-effective transportation routes, but also help inventory efficiency and navigate customs procedures to avoid unnecessary delays or costs. And also, let's not forget about the broader economic pressures that we all face. Rising prices for raw materials is always going to be an issue, but also for medicinal product costs as well, such as for comparative sourcing. Energy and labor costs are also increasing. And this is where I think businesses are also having to squeeze margins just to make sure that we can deliver what is required for the clinical trial. And in government-imposed price caps or in reimbursement limits, it's no surprise that some sponsors are forced to delay production, reduce batch sizes, or even sometimes halt clinical trials altogether because they can't make their budgets meet. As was indicated, in October 2025, Oximio welcomed Hamilton-based Bay Area Research Logistics to the Oximio family, extending our global reach and capabilities. We have since rebranded the entity as Oximio Ball Canada, as you've just heard, and this further combines Oximio's 20-plus years and Ball's 19-plus years of experience in providing global clinical trial support services globally. This provides significant benefits to Oximio's customers to provide extensive global supply chain expertise, not only the global markets, but also in North America. So let's have a look closer at Oximio Ball Canada facilities and services supporting clinical trials across North America. And I'll hand over to Caitlin here, where she will talk about our facilities in Canada. Caitlin, over to you.
Thank you so much, Saida. Our facilities are located in Hamilton, Ontario, where we operate at the heart of one of Canada's largest life sciences and healthcare corridors, being home to also Hamilton Health Sciences, as well as the Population Health Research Institute, which sponsors a number of large global clinical trials, as well as serving a population of more than 7.2 million people across Southern Ontario. Our depot provides 19,000 square feet of temperature-controlled storage, ranging from ambient to deep frozen, with also LN2 on the horizon, but available upon request. This infrastructure allows us to safely and compliantly handle a wide range of clinical trial materials, including antibiotics, cytotoxins, and ancillary supplies. What this means for our sponsors, our customers, is precision, compliance, and scalability. As the now North American center of Oximio, we will continue to provide trusted expertise in GMP packaging, storage, and distribution with the expanded access to Oximio's global network. This integration is allowing us to support both Canadian-based trials as well as globally coordinated programs, ensuring consistency, quality, and reliability across regions. From our North American operations, Oximio Barrow Canada delivers GMP and primary packaging services tailored to the needs of the clinical trial ecosystem. We support a diverse group of stakeholders, including universities, academic research groups, government and global health programs, and investigator-led trials. These programs often operate under unique constraints, and our team has become very experienced in navigating those realities. Our focus on CGMP compliant primary packaging, ensuring accuracy, consistency, and regulatory alignment at every stage. Whether supporting early phase studies, grant-funded research, or time-sensitive programs, we balance precision with flexibility. Sponsors typically choose us because we understand that clinical trials evolve, protocols change, timelines shift, and batch sizes vary. We are built to adapt without compromising compliance and being able to manage the demands of those clinical trials. Accurate, compliant, and efficient labeling is critical to the success of any clinical trial, and it's an area where small errors can have outsized impacts. At Oximio, we ensure that labeling and packaging for investigational medicinal products are not just compliant, but true assets to the study. Every primary and secondary package is carefully verified with unique lot numbers applied to support the end-to-end traceability required for tracking and regulatory compliance. The global map here showcases our own depots along with our partner global network. With 20 years of operational excellence providing supply chain solutions across the globe, Oximio's recent expansion into Canada integrates Oximio Barrel Canada into Oximio's existing global network of 20 plus depots, providing seamless support for multinational studies. We have a proven reputation in delivering supply chain solutions in complex regions, including the Ukraine, Georgia, Israel, and Africa. Our experience stretches across Europe, the MENA region, APAC, LATAM, and now North America. Here's how we support those clinical trials. Back to you, Zaida.
Thank you, Caitlin. So the three pillars that I'm going to speak about here actually provide the services that we here at Oximio can cover. And these are split, as you can see, in these three core areas: logistic solutions, sourcing capabilities, and clinical trial solutions. So all in all of these areas, addressing the many complex changes that are required or in need, there's a base of multinational trials. We have an underlying foundation of quality that runs through all these services. And this is driven by strong project management and covers all the aspects which are needed for clinical trials, which are covered here, ensuring the highest operational standards. The sourcing capabilities that are seen here actually are a blended, aspect that are required for clinical trials solutions to provide the end-to-end capabilities for our clients, where they can actually require not only medicinal product comparative sourcing, but also the ancillary and equipment purchase, along with devices and also equipment rental. Along with this is also our clinical trial solutions. And this is the customer and patient care is at the heart of everything that we do. And we pride ourselves in delivering unparalleled customer service and working closely with each individual client. For that purpose, we have a patient-centric approach and patient-centric services that is able to allow us in some locations to provide that patient-facing and patient-centric approach for delivering products direct to and from patient, home nursing, and also additional services that actually makes it very patient-centric and patient-focused. As indicated, we have a strong value proposition here at Oximio. Here are some of our competitive advantages. We do have flexible, tailor-made solutions. We can connect pharma and patients worldwide via flexible services tailored to the unique challenges of each clinical study. As we've indicated, uncompromising quality. We have a commitment as an organisation to excel and backed by advanced processes, infrastructure, and a culture that is dedicated to quality to deliver the best-in-class solutions to the highest quality standards. We aim to fulfill the needs of clinical trials across the globe, leveraging our experience, our subject matter experts, and our knowledge across the world to actually provide that expertise that is required to satisfy clinical studies worldwide. Again, putting not only patients, but also a customer at the heart of what we do to elevate the customer experience and provide complete transparency via our integrated computer systems and also our customer interfaces that we can actually provide the transparency for your clinical study. The strong customer relationship is also important, essential for ensuring swift and effective customer solutions and communication across all organizational levels. Thank you for listening today. We hope it has been informative. I'll now hand you back to Alex for any Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Zaida, and thank you, Caitlin, for sharing your insights. So, yeah, as Zaida said, we're now going to move on to the Q&A section of this webinar. Just a reminder to the audience as well, please submit your questions through the platform, and you can see the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. But we've had some questions come through while Caitlin and Zaida have been talking. We'll try and get through as many of these as we can. And yeah, so we'll just go straight into it. So let's have a look and see. So I think this first one, this looks like a question for you, Zaida. So do you provide global quality insights, and how are these measured and reported?
Thank you, Alex. And I think it was on a couple of the slides that we spoke to. So quality is at the core of everything that we do at Oximio, and we do have a global quality management system that provides oversight and performance visibility across all our regions and all our depots. We do measure standardized KPIs and objectives quarterly across every location. And we do analyze trends and insights at both local and global level. And what we do with this data is to drive continuous improvement and transparent reporting. So there's always concerns of having, a positive or a negative analysis, but what we do is make sure that we actually do that on an ongoing basis. So there's always improvements and also lessons learned from everything that we do. And then the reporting of those KPIs is also generated and provided to our clients as well.
Great. Thank you, Zaida. All right, this next one, I think this one I'll put to you, Caitlin. So can you act as an IOR, so importer of record for North America? And what are some examples of services that you can provide?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Alex. Importer of record services is absolutely a capability that we currently have at the Canadian facility, as well as at other locations of Oximio, but specific to North America. One product coming into Canada, very simple for our location to act as the importer of record and manage the shipment from wherever it's coming to our facility or site within Canada. Another instance might be where the shipment is going to the US, where we also have this capability. Also, in certain instances, you might see it where it's an import to Canada specifically for export to the US, which in some cases, that can be an effective option depending on the complexity of the product as well as the supply chain. In some cases, this type of model can reduce costs, specifically the duties that might be applied to the shipment, as well as taxes, but also can ease regulatory challenges in particular cases. So in any of these situations, we would manage the end-to-end process by overseeing and supporting the customs clearance, ensuring that any documentation or permits is there and will ease the shipment wherever it's going. Of course, the broker coordination along with that and any of the other regulatory documentation. But I also, of course, want to add that we can further support those downstream needs and activities that come from the importer of records services, such as things like the storing of the materials at our Canadian location or any of our other locations or partner depots. And of course, the packaging and labeling services that we had touched on as well. For sponsors, having somebody to be able to support all of this can not only simplify the cross-border movement, but really reduce risk across the entire supply chain. So I'd be amiss if I didn't mention the other capabilities that tie very closely to the importer of record services.
Great, thank you. Okay, there's another question. I think this is for you as well, Caitlin. So how can you overcome the challenges with returns for destruction services in the US?
Yeah, we see this a lot actually with US-based sponsors that are running clinical trials at Canadian sites. It can be quite difficult returning unused or expired investigational product back to the US for destruction. Quite often it will get held at the border or just will be returned back to the center because of the state of the product. And this can be complex for the sponsor, but also quite costly and time consuming due to these challenges, and also quite a burden on potentially the site that is sending the returns back to the sponsor. So in these cases, we would offer to handle the returns and destructions directly within Canada, where the site would send to our Canadian facility the returns for destruction. This, of course, eliminates the need to ship the product back to the US altogether. And from there, we can receive, reconcile, of course, securely store the return materials from the Canadian sites until authorized for destruction by the sponsor. And then from there, we would manage the compliant local destruction using our Canadian waste partners. As mentioned, this, of course, reduces any potential costs, border delays, regulatory risks that a sponsor would see if they did choose the method of shipping back to the US and it became a little more complicated. So all in all, this simplifies the study closeout procedures and provides the sponsors with a very clear audit trail with reconciliation records and certificates of destruction, all the documentation needed to meet the sponsors and, of course, the regulatory expectations.
Okay, great. Thank you for that answer, very detailed. And lastly, we've got a question. We'll put it to you, Zaida, and maybe Caitlin, you could come in on the second point if you have anything to add. So, Zaida, how do you see the clinical trials market developing in Canada in light of changes and instability in the US? And are you noticing any changes in specific areas already?
It's a really good question, and we have seen a trend, but we're here to manage the best outcomes in a positive way. We do ensure that there are BCPs in place if need be, especially with regards to the ongoing clinical trials. And we can support clients in case of any movements that may have been impacted because of the changes in the US administration that we saw at the beginning of last year. However, only time can tell. The administrations came into power at the beginning of last year, and change can be frustrating, but it's also frustrating that we don't have a crystal ball and we're unable to almost plan ahead or react to what's to come. But that being said, we can be reactive and we can be proactive as well, being in terms of if the situations that may change quite quickly, we are there to adapt and be agile to those situations. But having said that, some of your data actually comprehends what we are also seeing, that Canada is actually a very strong market for clinical trials. As I say, we don't have a crystal ball, and the impact of that, some of the changes may take years to try and come to the forefront. But having said that, we're here to make the best outcome of what we face, and we're ready to support our sponsors and most importantly the patients who are actually on these clinical trials in the best way possible.
Yeah, just to add to Zaida's comments, I mean, we're speaking as far as the specifics around Canada and the US, but really from a geopolitical perspective, there is some instability in other regions as well. And to Zaida's point, the importance of business continuity plans is at the forefront of managing those instabilities. And I think when looking specifically at Canada, we are ready to support any instances. And one thing that we are particularly seeing is those opportunities to avoid the potential of having to cross the border from the US and Canada. And that's where the importer of record services that we had discussed becomes really important. Of course, avoiding any of the extra duties and tariffs that could be presented during this period of time are absolutely a priority for sponsors running clinical trials. So that's where we look to play a role and support to be able to mitigate any of those potential costs or challenges.
That's great. Thank you both for answering those questions. So I've just got a couple of things left to say, just a bit of housekeeping just to finish things off. So yeah, thanks again, Zaida and Caitlin, for your insights today. And yeah, that just leaves me to say to the attendees, thank you for joining us as well. And tomorrow you will receive an email to say how you can access the on-demand version of this webinar, or you can access it through the website arena-international.com/events. Please use the related content box to access any additional resources, and please continue to ask questions and interact with the widgets, as the on-demand version of this event will remain interactive. And for those people who've submitted questions today, thank you so much for taking the time to do that. Unfortunately, we haven't had time, but the speakers can provide you with a written response directly for those who've done so. And thank you once again, and I hope to see you on another webinar.